Hi everybody, I hope you're all well. It is Remembrance Sunday here in the UK, and it's about 20 past 9 in the morning. So I am going to be filming this, and then I'm going to be heading over to my mum and dad's to watch the Sunday service from London on TV. So I'm trying to film this as quickly as possible so I can get to mum and dad's, and then I'm able to watch the service. It's been a busy week. Yesterday I went to town and I finally got hold of my copy of the illustrated Order of the Phoenix, which has been out for I think about a month now. But because of my holiday and other expenses, I wasn't able to buy it until I got paid, and then it just so happened that when I got paid, I was close to getting a £10 off voucher from Waterstone. So I was like, okay, hold off until you've got the £10 off voucher. And I did. And then I've applied that to this book. So, which I'm happy about because it's a big, heavy, expensive book. But I got £10 off. Yay. What else I've been up to? Obviously working and all that jazz. And yeah, yesterday I had a lovely trip to town and bumped into my mum and dad on the way home, who gave me a ride home. Yay, that was very sweet. Also been watching The Crown series 5, which I liked. I think it's probably my least favourite of them all, if I'm honest, but that doesn't mean it was bad. It's just there's a quite a shift, because every episode Elizabeth is the main focus, because she has the crown. But in this series, she's not. And episodes have different elements of building up to, obviously, Diana and Charles's divorce, and then what's going to go on into the next series. Obviously with Diana passing and everything. So yeah, she was less the focus, but there was one episode in particular where I was really surprised what they did, and I was very, very impressed with what they did. And it was to do with the Romanovs, and because in the 90s, the Soviet Union collapsed and such, and so what happened to the last Tsars and such, the Romanov family, was a horrific event and impacted the UK, because Tsar Nicholas's wife, the Tsarina Alexandra, was Queen Victoria's granddaughter. So there is a link to the UK, obviously. And yeah, it was very interesting, because it was all about the Romanovs being identified and calling on Philip to help out, although it kind of implied that only Philip got involved, and it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. But as all the controversy that's been going on and everything, we need to remember this is a drama, this is a reality. So yeah, but it would have been good if they actually mentioned the other people that got involved with identifying the Romanov family. But by the by, it's a good series. But what I think I'm going to have to do is like watch them all the way through series 1 to 5, and then I can definitively say what my ranking would be. But yeah, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as strong as previous series. Let's put it that way. But anyway, enough about my week. I am here to talk about the book I have been reading this week, which is Devil's Knot by Mara Leveritt. So, just to give you a backstory, in 2013, the film of this book came out, Devil's Knot. Here, I could only get the movie tie-in cover at the time, so that's why, got it. And I really liked the film. I got it on DVD, and I've gone and left it in my DVD player, so I can't hold up the disc, so you just have to imagine that I've got the DVD disc here in my hand. And I liked it, and it triggered my interest in this case in the West of Memphis 3. And that led me on to Paradise Lost, which I will talk about in a bit. And I was like, wow, this is a crazy case. And I learned a lot about this case. I bought the book specifically to learn more, picked it up, read a tiny bit, put it down, never picked it up again. And now it's 2022 and I'm probably reading this book. So, I've had it sat on my bookshelf for quite a significant amount of time. Better get round to reading it. And now I have. So in case you are not aware of what the hell I'm talking about, I'm talking about a true crime case that took place in West Memphis in 1993, in which 3 boys, who we've got pictures of right here. So we've got Christopher Byers, we've got Steve Branch, and we've got Michael Moore. These 3 boys went out to play on their bikes after school one day and never came home. Their bodies were discovered in an area of woodland known as the Robin Hood Woods. And they, again, I need to be a little bit graphic here, but not crazy graphic. They were found submerged in water, naked, and their wrists and their legs had been tied together, almost like hog-tied, and they had been thrown in the water and were killed. There was an extra level of brutality done to Christopher, which I'm not going to mention here, because it's a lot to hear. And they were only 8 years old when this happened. Now, at the same time, that same night, a restaurant called the police to say a black man has come into the restaurant, absolutely caked in mud and blood. He went straight into the ladies' room to clean up, and he left loads of blood wiped on the walls and everything. And by the time when the police turned up, who actually was the same officer who was taking statements from Christopher Byers' parents, she'd just literally come from one to the other. The man had gone, and he got tagged as Mr. Bojangles. She never went into the restaurant herself, but other officers were there to took samples, and they were missing, and that person has never been identified. And so they're trying to find the killer of these 3 boys who were killed in the most horrific, barbaric way. And this really was a witch hunt, because 3 teenagers with no connection to the boys, to what happened, anything, no physical evidence, nothing, were tried, convicted, and sentenced to life, and one of them was sentenced to death for their murders because they dressed differently, they listened to heavy metal music, and one of them had an interest in witchcraft. Just a general interest. And because of that, they were convicted. And it is one of the most messed up cases in history for me. The whole thing of connecting the 3 teenage boys who were 16, 17, and 18, Damien, Jason, and Jesse, to the occult, and saying, well, because of the way that these boys died, it was satanic ritual. So take these boys, do this weird imaginary link to the occult, take the 3 victims and say, okay, they were satanic ritual victims, put them together, there you go. There was not one piece of physical evidence that linked the 3 boys to the 3 teenagers to the death of these boys, but they were tried, convicted, and sentenced to life, and one put on death row for something that they didn't do for 18 years. And this is what this book covers. So I have to say, first of all, I was blown away by Mara and her writing, her attention to detail. You can tell she spent years, absolute years, thoroughly going through every little statement, every little thing, every statement, every piece of evidence, every line possible to be able to write this book. And she constantly refers back. So say at the beginning of the book, it says, okay, this statement was taken, da, 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 da. And a little bit down the line, she goes, right, here's the interrogation, the quizzing that happened. And let's not forget that this person had said this specific time that they'd last seen the boys and what they were doing. Let's listen to what this interrogation result came out with. Or, let's read it, because she has full transcripts and such. And she goes, right, you see how these two don't align? Right, we're going to need to remember this for a little bit longer. And she will go back. So it isn't a case of that you have to remember everything. She does refer back, which is very, very helpful, because this case is so messed up. And I really feel like she never ever forgot Christopher, Michael, and Steve. These three boys who were just, oh my God, I can't imagine. The thought of what they went through. They were only 8 years old when they died, going out to go on their bikes after school. Like, it's terrible. It's terrible. And this edition, just so you know, because there was further stuff that came to light in 2011, which meant that the three guys who were convicted, men by then, obviously, they were actually set free. So this is 2013 that this came out, and they were set free in 2011. So this version, should I say, this copy came out in 2013, because that's when the film came out. The book actually came out, let me just check, 2002. So there is an after word for 2003, and then there's a further afterword for 2011, for when Damien, Jason, and Jesse were set free. And the afterword in 2003 just gives me chills. So I'm going to read that to you, okay? So, since this book's publication, I have been asked about its title. Just to remind you, it's Devil's Knot. In the early stages of writing this book, I focused on knots that bound the victims. These knots were some of the few clear signs that the killer or killers left behind. I wanted never to forget Christopher Byers, Michael Moore, and Stevie Branch, or the vision of their naked bodies being bound by their own shoelaces. Even as I tried to view their tragedy with overdue rationality, I could not ignore my own human cry that was done to them was diabolical. As I wrote, I wanted to keep the knots front and centre. Who wrapped those loops and figure of eights around the boys' thin wrists and ankles? Whose hands yanked the square knots? Who tied the cruel half hitches? As my work progressed, a different kind of knot emerged. I saw it forming in the investigation and trials. This time, it was the three teenagers who were being bound. Like the boys, Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly had been caught by something bigger, more powerful than they, something intent on ending their lives. Over time, the twists and turns of the proceedings against the West Memphis Three would form an ugly new set of knots, strange legal bindings that hold them to this day. Remember, this was written in 2003 and they were set free in 2011. So that line is... I'll explain why it's technically still true, but just to remind you. Lacking rope, whoever tied the children made do with the boys' own shoelaces. What the prosecutors of the West Memphis Three lacked was evidence. They had 3 bloody, muddy murders and 3 young defendants, but not a scrap of physical evidence linking the accused to the crime. So they made do. They tied Jesse with his raggedy confession. I will talk about that more in a minute. Lacking a confession or anything else from the other 2, they resorted to triangulation by linking the crime to the words the occult, then linking Damien and Jason to those words. They indirectly linked them to the crime. The judge allowed the tactic and voila, that easy. And that insubstantially, the bedeviling absence of evidence was overcome. Since this book's release, I have begun to view its title more broadly. After the attacks on September 11th, 2001, the United States witnessed a swift erosion of freedoms that citizens once took for granted. Protections once required by law were abandoned in the name of defending the country against terrorism. The parallels to what happened in West Memphis, the horror, the panic, the rush, and the willingness to set aside standard legal procedures are obvious. And so are the attendant risks. Imagine now that the vague word terrorism is substituted for the vague word occult. Imagine a violent crime hastily rounded up suspects, a similar dearth of evidence. Imagine witnesses coming forward to say that the crime bore the trappings of terrorism. Imagine evidence acquired under the so-called USA Patriot Act that the suspects had checked out a library book on Islam, or had written emails critical to the US policy, or owned a CD with lyrics about violence. Imagine that just that easily and indirectly the accused are linked to the crime. It's another devil's knot. Add the strangling element of panic, and any one of us can be snared. That gave me chills. That gave me such chills, because she said, it's not just about the time. It can happen to anyone. Again, oh my gosh, this case is insane. Now, in that afterward, it mentioned Jesse's confession. So Jesse, one of the teens, I think he was 16, he was the youngest at the time. Jesse had, he was neurodivergent. He had severe learning difficulties to the degree that he was 16, and he had a mental capacity of a child of around the ages of 6 to 10, I believe it was, or 6 to 12. I can't remember which one. So his development and such was not matching his age. So Jesse, his name gets put forward as someone to look into. The police go get him and bring him to the police station. Reminder again, obviously, his development age and such, his neurodivergency and such, he wouldn't have understood what was going on. He was interrogated for 12 hours straight with no lawyer, no person to sit with him, an appropriate adult, none of that. Now, obviously, appropriate adult is a term in the system here in the UK. I don't know if that's the case in the US. I'm pretty sure it is, but in case it's not and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about somebody who an adult who is assigned to sit with Jesse, to be there as a support for them, because it is recognized that the person who is being questioned by the police may not fully understand what is going on for one reason or another. So they are specially trained to give support and such. But there's certain rules about what they can say and what they can't, etc. So he didn't have any of that. Out of the 12 hours that was spent interrogating him, 46 minutes was recorded. And amongst that was Jesse's confession that he, Damien and Jason had killed the boys. But all of the things that he said didn't match what actually happened. And you can hear on the tapes the police are gaslighting him, and because he once refers to seeing the boys about 5 or 6 o'clock. And then later he mentions 7 or 8, and they went, well, hang on, before you said 5 to 6, so was it 5 to 6 or 7 or 8? What is it, Jesse? Come on. And it's because they know that the last time the boys were seen, or the various different statements for the neighbours and such, the last time that they were seen and parents was around, for Stevie's mother, it was about 4 between 3:30, 4:00. But some of them said 5, some of them said 6, and she was in work at that point. So yeah, it's just like, what? Just the gaslighting is unreal. And Damien and Jason didn't have the difficulties that Jesse had. But yeah, they were kids who just dressed a bit differently, who were into different things, who listened to heavy metal music, and so they must be part of the occult. And that's why they were convicted. And it is just oh my God, the justice system and the police mess ups in this case are unreal. And Mara presents it so well, so succinctly, with transcripts and linking, and she puts everything in order. And the way that she never lets go of the focus of the justice for the 3 victims, but also justice for the other 3 victims, the West Memphis 3, for what they went through. While this was all happening, an MTV documentary film crew were there for a documentary series called Paradise Lost, which I will mention, which I will cover in a bit when I talk about Devil's Not the Film and such. And that there were 3 films in total over the course of the trial and then the aftermath of the trial and everything, with what happened. And those films are an eye-opener for sure. They're pretty tough to watch, especially the opening of the first one. Again, I'll talk about that in a bit. But that, all of the stuff that they captured was so much evidence that Mara could refer to in this book, and you can tell that she had every single frame of every single moment of those films, she has been writing notes and everything. She's been cross-referencing with all of the different evidence, and even it was unreal that things that should have been evidence, logged as evidence, weren't. Things that were said that would never appear as evidence, actually in court documents appeared as evidence. Like, what the hell happened? And they wanted, it was a witch hunt. It was a witch hunt. Just because one person mentioned the word occult at a press conference, they went and ran with that. And these 3 teenagers spent 18 years of their life behind bars, one on death row, for something that they never did. And it's just astonishing that this happened. It's a crazy case, and I love, as mentioned in her afterward, that she didn't want the names to be forgotten. She didn't want them to be blurred out, as it were, left out of their own story. And in a way, kind of like, she didn't want to happen to those boys like what happened to the victims of Jack the Ripper, where we just put them in a box of prostitute and put them there, and we don't give a shit about them. She didn't want that to happen in this case. And I'm so thankful that she wrote this in-depth book. It is, chef's kiss. This is one of those books that, like I'll Be Gone in the Dark or The 5, where it is a crime-related non-fiction book that is going to stay with me for some time. Wonderfully constructed. Everything in chronological order. Everything noted, referred back to, summarized wonderfully. There's so many twists and turns and such with this case. It's hard to explain specific things that I want to say without revealing stuff about the case that necessarily that I don't want to make you uncomfortable hearing. Obviously, if you want to go off and research this stuff, you can do yourself. You can get this book and read it yourself. So I don't want to spoil, and also I want to make sure you guys are comfortable. So there we go. that the level of respect she has given everyone in this, not just the victims and their family, every single person linked referred to in this case whatsoever is wonderful. I just, oh my god. And this is so, it's a really controversial case. It's a very hard case to write about. It's a very hard thing. I mean, it took MTV 3 films, so that's, I think, at least 6 hours to tell the story. And she has done the same thing in about 400 pages. Like, it is so brutal. It really holds up a mirror to the police and go, look what you did. And I just, I feel so angry when I think about this case. No one got the justice that they deserved. And to be honest, I am very, very happy that the families of Michael, Steve, and Christopher, when time had gone on and you were able to see further back and see everything, when these guys didn't do it, and they campaigned to get them out of prison. That must have been a lot to go from. The police are telling me that these 3 guys killed my child, having to deal with that, the weight of losing a child and all of that lot, and then having time pass to go, actually, I want to get you out. This isn't right. The justice system that I believed in fucked up entirely, and I want to help get you out. That must, oh my god. Wow. That's a lot. And also, in other ways, the police just messed up so much. Not just with going, right, we're going to pin it on these guys. They, as I said, lost evidence. They didn't do interviews that they should have done. They believed the evidence of a child who told a story who now, years later said, I don't even know where that story came from. I don't remember it happening and such. So clearly he was told that story. And the thing that really, really fucking sickens me, I'm sorry to get so passionate and swearing, but you know what I'm like on this channel. The thing that really sickens me is that where the Robin Woods begin, there was this big silver barrier with a do not enter sign and such, and that's where the kids went into the woods when they went off on their bikes. And that's where the police cars and all the reporters hung around when they were, still looking for the boys and everything. And when the boys were found, I can't believe this happened, rather than going to the families' homes and saying, we found them and I'm so sorry they've passed away, doing that in private, the police contacted the families, told them to come to the wood, the edge of Robin's Wood, where all the camera crews were, and tell them to their face in front of the cameras that their children were dead. And that footage is in Paradise Lost. It was in so many news coverage, and it's one of the most devastating things I've ever seen. And it makes me feel emotional right now, thinking about it. Watching Pam Hobbs, who was Steve's mother, collapse and scream. A scream that I've never heard in my own life, never heard come out of anyone's mouth before. That's so, oh God, I can hear it now in my head. Oh, it's making me emotional. To have that, the police, they could have done that in private. They could have done that in private, but instead they told the family to come in front of all the press and say that to their faces. Just, oh my God, it's sick. It's sick what happened in this case. And it is an area of the country as well, in USA, where God and such, the church and that and faith is a big part of people's lives. And so the whole thing of the occult being referred to meant everyone was like high alert and such. And so the witch hunt began, and the police had to find someone. And they're like, oh yeah, these boys dress different. They listen to heavy metal music. They did it. And it's so wrong. It's so wrong. I've been going on for half an hour now, so I'm going to bring this to a close. But Mara's thorough work on this is one of the most touching, heartbreaking pieces of work about this case that I've ever read. And it doesn't hold back. It doesn't, miss the failures of the police. It tells the truth in all its raw honesty and gives as much focus to all the victims of this case as possible. And she, as in her afterward, how she didn't want their names to be forgotten, she put them first and foremost, and she never let go of that. And for that, I'm bravo, because wow, did it make a powerful piece. It is very intense. She is not afraid to go into detail, so there is some really graphic detail that she discusses in this, but she has to in order, because of this is what happened with the case. Just like with Paradise Lost, there is some real graphic stuff in there as well, which I will talk about now. But yeah, it is a brilliant piece of writing that she deserves all the praise for possible for putting together. And my God, it's astonishing. Absolutely astonishing piece of writing. I love it. Now, when it comes to Paradise Lost, so this is the MTV documentaries that were made at the time that the trial was going on and everything, and they really got behind the Free the West Memphis 3 campaign, because it was these documentaries, these MTV documentaries, that really brought this to the forefront of people internationally, but also it was known internationally but on a different level, and to a younger audience as well, the audience who were the same age as Damien, Jesse and Jason. So yeah, it was like, this was a whole like new thing, because documentaries like we get on like Netflix and stuff like that didn't really exist then. So this was brand new thing. They are really good, very good detail. They were there in the courtroom filming. They were interviewing everyone involved. They had pretty unrestricted access. So much so that I want to flag this now. If you do watch it, the very first film, the first few minutes are very tough to watch. I'll explain what it is, but just for the next 30 seconds to a minute, I'll be talking about this rather graphic opening. So if you want to skip, please skip. I will say it as fast as I can so that you don't skip and find yourself in the middle of it. So here we go. So the opening shot is actually, opening sequence is the police filming the crime scene when they found. So you see bike being put onto the big pipe that they walked across in order to get into the Robbins Wood properly over the river. And then the camera pans down to a bit over to the side where the boys' bodies are. They are fully exposed. They were fully exposed for 4 hours. and the coroner wasn't called until 2 hours after their bodies were found, but they're just left there on the bank. And the camera zooms straight into their faces, into their bodies, major high close-up. Obviously, you can see their faces and everything, and their brutal way their bodies were tied, and they're just left there. And that's the opening sequence, and it lasts for a few minutes. It is very, very tough to watch. From that point on, whenever we see them again, we're just seeing like pictures, or it's because it's from an evidence point of view. It's not from a point of view of, right, let's startle the people and get them hooked like the opening sequences. But I totally get, and the opening sequence needs to be what it is, because you needed to feel the shock factor of what this crime was. So yeah, it's in ways you could say that is really an inappropriate thing for them to have done, but at the same time, I totally understand why they did it. So even though you can find Paradise Lost on YouTube, I'm not going to link to it just because of that opening sequence, and I don't want people to click on it and then find that sequence has happened, it appears before them, which they may not be prepared for or might not be the appropriate age for. So I am going to say, if you want to watch Paradise Lost, Google it, or YouTube search it yourself and go down that route yourself. But I'm not going to put a link to something on a video which could be viewed by someone who is not of the appropriate age. I will, though, put a trailer to Devil's Knot, the film, the 2013 film. And also in 2012, there was a documentary made called West Memphis. I think that's what it's... Yes, no, West of Memphis. That's it. Sorry, West of Memphis, which was produced by Peter Jackson. I have not been able to see it, and it's on Amazon Prime, which I don't have. So I really want to watch it, but apparently it was absolutely phenomenal. The level of detail and extra footage that about the case, because obviously the freeing of Damien, Jason, and Jesse in 2011 is covered quite substantially in that. So there are extra interviews and such. So that's why that one is. But yeah, so I will include a trailer for that, even though I haven't seen it. Apparently it is absolutely brilliant, and I would definitely recommend. And I would recommend Paradise Lost if you want to see it, but be aware of the graphic nature of it. I don't know how graphic West of Memphis is because I haven't seen it. So, but I will include a trailer for that below. Now, when it comes to Devil's Knot, the 2013 adaptation of this book starring Reese Witherspoon and Colin Firth, it is terrible. I rewatched it because I still had my DVD copy from when I bought it when it first came out, because that was my first encounter with the West Memphis 3 and everything, because I thought it was all right film. I thought it was, wow, what a case. Now I've read the book and I've watched it. I'm like, what in the hell is this? Oh my God, it feels like, because there was so much footage, because of, like, you know, Paradise Lost and all this lot, and obviously it was on TV, it was everywhere. Everyone was being interviewed like every single day by all of these different reporters and such. There's a lot of footage. And because of a lot of footage, there's a lot of things that they can reference and they can reenact. And I felt like the focus was more on the reenactment, and the boys got lost. So much so, and I am livid about this. Right. Michael has one scene where he's still alive. He has no lines. And his name is referred to because Steve says, because Michael turned up at the house and wanted to go out invited Steve to come out to play bites. Well, he had no lines. And occasionally he's referred back to as being Michael. Christopher, we see him once when he's alive on the back of Michael's bike. And his name, Christopher, is not said until the end of the film. He's a footnote of the film. His parents are featured. They're referred to, you know, the buyers. And whenever they refer to Christopher, or anyone else refers to Christopher, he's the buyer's boy, or he's my boy, or he's my son. his name is never explicitly said until the end of the film. I cannot wrap my mind around that, especially what was done to Christopher that wasn't done to the other boys, and his name isn't even mentioned. I cannot fathom that. I cannot fathom it. So Pam Hobbs, played by Reese Witherspoon, who is Steve's mum, is a major focus, and so Steve is the victim who is the forefront. Michael, we get a little bit about, but not much, and then Christopher is shoved to the very back and is just not acknowledged by name until the very end of the film. They focus more on the reenactment than the injustice. The tone of it is completely wrong. I feel like it should have had the tone that Zodiac had. Zodiac was so well done. It got the tone of everybody's fears and such in the areas and such where Zodiac was active in so well. There were times where you didn't need a score and such, and the score in Devil's Knot is like this really big, like, saga sweeping stuff, and like no. Paradise Lost did the thing that, because Damien, Jason, and Jesse have been convicted because their love of like Metallica and such, they used Metallica as the score, and it's perfect. It's brilliant. It's like, use what was related to this case, and the Devil's Knot film didn't do that. It just feels completely and utterly wrong in every way, and the lack of saying Christopher's name is unforgivable to me, so I'm not interested in seeing that film again. But yeah, I would definitely recommend Paradise Lost if you are wanting to look into those films, but as I said, because of graphic natures and such of it, I'm not going to put a link to it here on in the description of my video, but feel free to Google it or search on YouTube to find it. But I will put a trailer for West of Memphis, and when I'm able to watch that, I will let you know what I think. But there we go. I've been rambling on for 42 minutes, so I'm going to stop now. So those are my thoughts on Devil's Knot. Now, let's ask my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I can't take it. Would I read any more of Mara Leveritt's work? Yes, definitely. I don't know what other books Mara has published, or if she has published any other books. I need to look into that. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, if anyone is wanting to know more about this case, I would say you have to read this. It feels like this is a definitive book on the case. Oh my gosh. And I do wonder, because there is the 2011 afterward about Damien, Jason, and Jesse being freed, but it is very brief, and it was at a time where we didn't necessarily have all the details of what the heck. It was just like, boom, it happened, like, what the fuck. So that what the fuck is basically the reaction, like, oh my god, this is insane, that what's going on? And then it ends, and I don't have any more, so I do wonder if there has been a later edition with that expanded on. I don't know, I'd have to look into that. But yeah, I definitely would like to know Mara's thoughts on it now, and everything. And I have to just give a shout out to Damien, Jesse, and Jason, who completely recognize why they got thought of as suspects, and they haven't gone, fuck you, ranting, like screaming. They have dealt with what has happened to them with dignity and grace, and they're like, look guys, we had 18 years of our lives taken from us. We want to experience things. We want to live life. So let us live our lives. And that's what they have done. And, they could have gone ranting, they could have sued, they could have done this, that, and the other, and but they haven't. And fair dues to them, total respect to them for everything. Wow. such amazing people for having to have gone through the horrors that they have gone through and just want to just live their lives. Just wow. Okay, so those are my thoughts on Devil's Knot by Mara Leveritt. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you, like you said. And I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which I'm very excited for, which is Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. This is gonna hit me hard, I can tell. It's not that long a book actually, but yeah, we'll see. About 440 pages, so we'll see how I go. It might be a week, might be 2 weeks, I don't know, we shall see. But yeah, I'll be back with my thoughts on Dr. Zhivago as soon as I'm done. All right guys, bye.